There is a moment most dog owners miss, and it happens long before any command is given or any behavior becomes obvious. Your dog is already watching you in ways that feel quiet, almost invisible, but deeply intentional and structured over time. It is not curiosity and it is not random attention, even though it can look that way on the surface. It is assessment, and it begins far earlier than most people realize. You might notice it when you walk into a room and your dog briefly looks up before lowering their gaze again as if nothing important just happened. That glance feels small, almost meaningless, something you could easily ignore without a second thought. But that moment is not about greeting you or seeking attention in the way most people assume. It is about reading you, and that reading never really stops. Dogs do not just respond to what you say in the moment you say it, and they do not rely on isolated interactions the way humans often expect them to. They respond to patterns that build slowly through repetition, consistency, and subtle shifts in your behavior that you may not even notice yourself. Long before behavior changes, they begin forming silent conclusions based on what they observe again and again. And those conclusions shape everything that follows, often without any obvious signal. Most owners believe their dog reacts in real time, as if each interaction is separate from the last and disconnected from what came before. But what is actually happening is a continuation of observations that have been building over days, weeks, and sometimes much longer. Each small interaction becomes part of a larger internal picture that your dog is constantly refining. And your dog is always adding to that picture, even when nothing seems to be happening. When your energy shifts, even slightly, your dog notices it in ways that are far more precise than most people expect. Not in an emotional or dramatic way, but in a measured and consistent way that reflects their natural awareness of environment and movement. They are not guessing and they are not reacting randomly. They are tracking patterns and adjusting their understanding of you based on those patterns. This is why some behaviors seem to appear suddenly, as if they came out of nowhere without any warning. In reality, they were developing quietly beneath the surface long before you noticed anything had changed. What feels sudden to you feels expected to your dog, because they saw it forming piece by piece. And by the time it becomes visible, it has already been established. Now watch what happens in moments when you are distracted and not actively engaging with your dog. Your dog does not stop observing you during those moments, and in many cases the observation becomes even more focused. Because when you are not paying attention, your behavior becomes more natural and less controlled. And that is where the most accurate information comes from. Those are the moments where your dog is not reacting to you, but studying you without interference. There is no command, no expectation, and no structured interaction guiding the behavior. It is simply observation in its purest form. And that kind of observation carries more weight than any direct engagement. Over time, these observations begin to influence how your dog responds to you in subtle but meaningful ways. Not just in commands, but in presence, movement, timing, and attention. The responses you see are not random and they are not isolated. They are shaped by everything your dog has already decided based on what they have consistently observed. You may start to notice that your dog reacts differently depending on your state, even if you have not consciously changed anything. The response might feel slightly faster, slightly slower, or slightly more controlled than before. These differences are small, but they are not accidental. They reflect an internal adjustment that has already taken place. Now watch what happens when these adjustments begin to repeat across different situations. The same type of response starts appearing in multiple contexts, even when the environment changes. That consistency is not coincidence. It is confirmation that your dog has formed a stable interpretation of what they are seeing. This is where most owners misunderstand what is happening, because nothing looks dramatic or obvious from the outside. There is no clear moment where everything changes at once. Instead, there is a gradual shift that builds quietly through repetition. And that quiet build is what makes it so easy to miss. Dogs do not need large events to form conclusions about the world around them. They rely on small, repeatable patterns that provide reliable information over time. The more consistent the pattern, the stronger the conclusion becomes. And once that conclusion is formed, it begins to guide behavior in a very stable way. This is why inconsistency has such a strong impact, even when it seems minor from a human perspective. A small change in timing, tone, or movement can alter how a pattern is interpreted. And when that interpretation shifts, behavior begins to shift with it. Not immediately, but progressively. Now consider how often your dog is exposed to these small variations without you noticing them. Daily routines are filled with subtle differences that seem insignificant in isolation. But from your dog's perspective, those differences are part of a continuous stream of information. And that stream is always being processed. Over time, your dog builds a highly detailed understanding of how you behave in different situations. Not based on what you intend, but based on what you consistently do. This understanding becomes the foundation for how they respond to you. And once it is established, it becomes very stable. This is why your dog can sometimes appear to anticipate your actions before you make them. It is not prediction in the way people often describe it. It is recognition of patterns that have repeated often enough to become reliable. And when something is reliable, it becomes expected. Now watch what happens when that expectation is slightly disrupted. The response does not disappear immediately, but it changes just enough to feel different. There might be a brief pause, a shift in attention, or a delay that was not there before. And that moment is where adjustment begins. Most people overlook that moment because it does not seem important on its own. The behavior still happens, so there is no clear reason to question it. But that small difference is the first visible sign that something has already changed internally. And once it appears, it tends to repeat. As it repeats, it becomes easier to notice, but by that point it is no longer the beginning of the change. It is the continuation of something that has already been building. The visible behavior is simply catching up to the internal shift. And that is why it can feel sudden. So when your dog looks at you, even briefly, it is rarely just a simple glance without meaning. It is part of an ongoing process that connects past observations with present interpretation. Every look adds information, even if it lasts only a second. And that information is never wasted. Over time, those small moments accumulate into something much larger than they appear individually. They form the basis of how your dog understands you, your consistency, and your role in their environment. And once that understanding is formed, it becomes the lens through which all interactions are processed. That is why the way your dog watches you matters more than it seems. Not because of the look itself, but because of what that look represents in a much larger system of observation. It is not passive and it is not random. It is structured, continuous, and deeply connected to behavior. And once you begin to notice that, something shifts in how you see your dog as well. You realize that observation is happening all the time, not just in obvious moments. You begin to see the small pauses, the brief glances, and the subtle adjustments. And those details start to make sense. Because your dog has been watching you far more closely than you ever imagined. Not occasionally, but consistently. Not randomly, but with purpose. And that awareness is what shapes everything that comes next.